was just expressing my gratitude to everyone who had stayed with us during the whole day of conversations. And for those who are just joining from Latin America and elsewhere, good morning. For those who are like ending the day in Asia, good night, and good evening for the rest of us. I am very grateful to have the opportunity to speak to someone who built the tech that many of us were waiting for. And we are we have been discussing, Frank, all the day, the complexities of not only criticizing, but actually building the tech futures we want to see. We also have been discussing today the big gaps that sometimes we have, resources, community, adoption, complexity, that impede us to translate into action the ideas of a better digital future that we have in our minds. So the keynote that we invited you to develop is the cloud people want. And basically, one of the conversations that we have been trying to unpack today is how open, decentralized alternatives can empower people, but how many times the complexities and many barriers to usability, many barriers to having to dig very deep to find the tool that you really need, institutional constraints and so on, keep us away from the tech we wish to adopt. Even if the tech that we have today is not delivering for people, is not delivering for the planet, and certainly is not allowing us to build together with them. So I have to say that together with many others, you have built more than just tools. You have built a vision that and a blueprint that had shown many organizations and many governments a way out of the building falling down of big tech. And so our invitation today is for you to share how you did it and to share what your learnings, what you will do differently, and what can we deliver in this vision, the cloud that people want. So with no further word, the floor is yours, and then we will have a small conversation to unpack what you are going to share with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Renata. It's really an honor to be here to speak at this great event, this great organization, and thanks for the nice words. Of course, I have to do some put it into context. So obviously, Nextcloud is not only done by me; it's by a big community. It's a big team. Actually, nowadays, I don't really do very little or no coding anymore. So it's actually built by mostly other people. But yeah, I'm happy to share some experiences, some things that we try to do differently. Also, like the title of this presentation, The Cloud People Want, was actually suggested by you, Renata, I think. So of course, we are at Nextcloud, we are trying to build the cloud that people want. I would not dare to say that this is 100% what we achieved, of course. But yeah, obviously we are trying to do what people actually want, not what's good for shareholders or making money. It's a community project. It's everybody is helping to shape it in the direction they want. So I think together we hopefully build what people want. Obviously, can never really achieve that, but I think we have some things, and I'll show it later, that we do differently than big tech companies there. So let me start the presentation. First about me, I'm a developer, I'm a computer scientist. Was involved or am involved in open source projects for a very, very long time, since the middle of the 90s, for example, in the KDE project, where I was did a lot of different things. I'm also was and am part of other organizations, initiatives. I was an invited expert at the W3C, helped to build the ActivityPub protocol, which is nowadays running the Fediverse, like Mastodon. I'm doing some political lobbying for Open Forum Europe to bring more open source to Europe and other places, of course. I work with the United Nations. I founded other projects. OwnCloud was mentioned here, for example, the project before, but I think I'm mostly here as founder and CEO of Nextcloud. So as I mentioned, I'm doing IT for a long time, open source for a long time, since the 90s. One thing was that in the 90s, IT was not political. IT was just actually a very unimportant part of companies and organizations of governments. It was just something you need to have, like you need to have water and electricity and stuff like that. But IT was not really that critical. It was not really political. Of course, nowadays, a lot of things changed. Now IT, and I will show you some things in a few seconds. Nowadays, IT is like super, super important. I mean, first of all our lives became digital. We are no longer going online. We are always online. We're using the internet for everything, communicating, consuming media, talking with our friends and family, ordering food, like controlling our homes, like really, really everything. And because it's everything, it's also so important that it's like free and open and decentralized and not centralized, because otherwise it would mean that we as a society and as humans are also then somehow centralized and controlled by some big tech companies, which is not good. So as I said, some things changed since the 90s. There's this saying that data is the new oil. What's meant there is that oil is, of course, a central building block of the old economy. So the old economy basically is running on oil. And the idea is data is basically the building block of the new generation. And this saying here exists for some time. But of course, it becomes more important like every day, right? I mean, data is, for example, free communication, to have independent elections that are not like manipulated. Also, data is very important for AI, for training AI systems. So data is really, in a way, it is really true. The data is the building block of the future. And we all know where oil is coming from, right? We know all the countries in the world that are producing oil. And we also know all the conflicts, all the wars that are triggered by in these regions because of fight over control over oil. And we can really map a lot of the conflicts we see in the world directly to who is in control of the oil. Okay, if data is the new oil, then of course the question is who controls then the data? Where is the data? Who has access to it? This is then really important because this can be conflicts of the future. So at Nextcloud, we did a lot of research to see where the data actually is, who has access to the data, where is the data stored. And we did lots and lots of work, very complex work and lots of research to visualize this on a world map. And this is the result. Of course, that's a joke, as you might have noticed, but it basically means that Silicon Valley is control of our data, right? And a little bit north of Silicon Valley is, of course, then Microsoft and Amazon near Seattle. So this is basically who controls the building blocks of the future of our lives, the future of our economy, of our societies. And well, that's obviously a problem. Well, this chart is obviously a bit of a joke, but this thing is actually accurate. So the bubbles here, the sides of the bubbles are representing actual cloud companies who are controlling the data. And as you can see, this is not fairly distributed. We did this from a European perspective to show how insignificant and tiny and not important the EU is here. We didn't bother to add like the global south here, right? If you would add the global south, then the bubbles would be even smaller or non-existent, right? So obviously we see a huge imbalance of power here. And this is a chart that I used for many years. But of course, the challenges are accelerating at the moment. So we all know what's happening in the US at the moment, the White House. Of course, we also know what's happening in other places. We know what's happening in Russia. We know what's happening in China, all non-democratic places. And but the tension between the US and also Europe is really accelerating since a few months, obviously, if you're following the news. And this makes these problems that I mentioned earlier just so much more urgent and so much more important for today. So when we use ask our users and customers what are the actual problems like between the US and Europe regarding cloud and data, then they mention three things mostly: availability, cost, and security. So I want to dive a little bit into this now, what the actual problems are. A lot of people have this diffuse things that, it's not really good with big tech, but what are the actual problems? What are the actually concrete problems? Let's start with availability. So the first factor of availability is the compliance that European companies can actually use US cloud services. As you know, in Europe, we have the GDPR, which is quite a strict data privacy framework. And there are lots of rules and regulations that help to protect the data. Obviously, these laws don't exist in the US. So the US has very weak data privacy protection. So obviously, giving them our data is not a good idea. It's not compliant because they're not protecting the data in the same way it needs to be protected in Europe. So in that way, you cannot really give your data to your US companies. This would be bad for business, right? And this is why clever politicians in Europe and the US came up with agreements. So they first came up with the Safe Harbor Agreement, which was just a piece of paper which says, it's compliant. If you give the data to US companies, it's fine. It's no problem, which obviously is a lie because you know the laws, right? The laws are not as strict in the US. So it is a problem, but you have this piece of paper which says it's fine, no problem. Of course, this was then struck down by the highest European court because of Max Schrempf's suit against it. And it became invalid. And then the politicians said, okay, well, that's too bad. Let's try again. They came then with the Privacy Shield agreement, which was just the same. And because it was the same, it was struck down by the European courts for the second time, again by Max Schrems, who sued against it. And again, too bad. Then the politicians tried a third time with the data privacy framework. And this is the current framework, which is technically still in place, which says, you can give the data to the US, no problem. But as I said, this agreement is questionable in the first place. But now we have Donald Trump in the White House, and he fired most of the courts of a court which should oversee this agreement. So this agreement is no longer functional because the courts are the judges are no longer there in the court. This can basically collapse at any moment, and then it becomes just illegal to use like AWS and Google Cloud and Azure and all these other cloud services. So this is the first concern around availability. Second concern is, of course, the famous kill switch. Right? As you know, Trump is willing to use access to cloud services as a part of his negotiations, similar as he's doing this with tariffs. So it's possible, and he did this with other countries and other organizations. For example, he shut down access from the International Court of Justice, just shut down access to Microsoft services from them. He just can do that, and he can do this with anyone else on the planet. So there's a real danger that he's testing this kill switch to blackmail other organizations, companies, countries, organizations who don't follow his rules. So this is actually something that is actually a real danger. The third point around availability is then, of course, the whole discussions around regulations. For example, in Europe, we have the Digital Markets Act, we have the Digital Services Act, we have the AI Act, we have the GDPR. These are all regulations that we have in Europe, maybe we will even tax tech companies in the future. And these are all things the US does not like, right? And whenever Europe tries to enforce their own laws against big tech companies, then Trump gets angry and again might press the big blue, or not big blue button, big red kill switch here. So this is a real danger. So availability of cloud services are really, really questionable. Then let's look at the second area of concern, which is costs. So first of all, we all see in the news these discussions around tariffs. Right? At the moment, tariffs only apply to physical goods. So there are no tariffs on cloud services or internet services yet, but this could change at any moment. It's possible that the EU is trying to enforce that to respond to US tariffs, or it can also be enforced the other way around. Long story short, there is a danger that the costs of cloud services really explode. They get really high, they double in price, 3 times in price because of these tariffs discussions. So this is a real danger, and yeah, European companies who use these cloud services are really afraid of unplannable costs that come towards them. And then, of course, you have the whole questions about monopolies. As you know, Microsoft has a de facto monopoly on productivity office products. And the good thing, if you have monopolies, you can just raise the prices as you want. No problem, because your customers cannot run away. So Microsoft just increased the prices by 40% earlier this year. I don't know a lot of businesses who can just increase the prices by 40% without any effects. Well, they can, because you cannot migrate away. It's really, really hard. So yeah, costs are really a danger here. And then let's talk about the third point, security and espionage. So many years ago, the whole area question about espionage was very theoretical. A lot of people thought, oh, who would read my emails? Who would listen to my video calls? This is not really a real danger. I have nothing to hide. Right? But now we see that this is actually very real. It's totally plausible then if the US does negotiations with European Commissions, then before the negotiations, let's read all the chat messages, let's follow all the video calls, let's read all the documents the European Commission has in the US clouds. And then you're really good prepared for negotiations because you have all the information, right? So this is a real danger. And also from the industry side, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Boeing would be very interested to know what Airbus is doing. And this is something that is very real. And because the data is just there on the services and on the service of these US services, and you have the Cloud Act, which gives like US organizations full access to everything. So this is actually a real danger. So this is what our customers are telling us. And yeah, this is actually very real. So the key point here is really digital sovereignty. So sovereignty is, of course, a concept that you should, and this is the place for a citizen, also for a company, but also for a government. Sovereignty means that you can independently act to do what you want. Right? You should not be forced by other countries, organizations to do what they want. You should be sovereign. That's a concept that is important for humans. It's also important for governments, that you are just independent. And digital sovereignty, of course, means that you should do in your digital world to do what you want to do. You should not depend on others. And that's something we want to achieve. And as mentioned earlier, this is something where we as Nextcloud are trying to have a positive impact. Now I have a few slides about Nextcloud itself. It's like the advertising blog. Sorry for that. I think most of you already know Nextcloud, but maybe give you a very, very quick overview what it actually is. So the latest release that we have is Nextcloud Hub 10. That's the latest version that we launched just a few weeks ago. What it is it's basically a collaboration suite. Gartner calls it a content collaboration suite. So it is basically everything that you need to have to communicate and to collaborate with others over the internet. It has files for uploading, downloading, syncing, sharing documents with your devices and other people. Then there's Nextcloud Talk, for chat and video conferencing. There's groupware for mail, calendar, contacts, and then there's Office for working with Office documents together. All of that very similar to Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Slack, Zoom, Dropbox, and so on. Obviously, with the key differences that everything we do is 100% open source. And because of that, you can also run it and install it decentralized on-premise wherever you want. So actually, we as Nextcloud, we don't have any servers. We don't do any hosting at all. Sometimes people come to our homepage and are surprised that you cannot create an account there. No, we don't want your data. We don't want accounts. We don't want you log in your passwords, nothing. The only thing you can do on our website is download the software and then you install it wherever you want. So it's all about decentralization and federation, but more about this in a second. So let's go through the parts here of Nextcloud a bit. This is Nextcloud files. Again, you can upload, download, share, sort, search, manage all your documents there. Of course, there are desktop and mobile apps for iOS, Android, Mac, Windows, and Linux to synchronize your files, to access everything. Again, also fully 100% open source, as the rest is, of course. There's Nextcloud Talk for chat and video conferencing. You can have a group chat there with people, one-on-one chats, share your documents in there, do a poll, have a calendar invite, very similar to Teams and similar products or Slack. Then, of course, you can press a button and you start a video call. And again, we have mobile apps there where you can then chat with people, answering incoming calls, everything you expect around it. There's a calendar that you can use yourself to manage your appointments, and of course you can share them with others, synchronize them with your phone and desktops and so on. So everything you expect from a calendar. There's mail. So there's, of course, the mail interface where you can do all your mails, respond to it, have a priority inbox, newsletter management, spam management, GVG, SVM encryption, everything you expect there. There's contact management where you can manage your contacts and again sync them to your phones and other devices, share them with others. There's a project management tool. It's called Deck. This is a Kanban style project management where you can just have your cards and you can move them around, assign them to others. We, for example, use this very extensively internally at Nextcloud and it works very well. And then there's Nextcloud Office. This is something we do together with our friends from Collabra Online. This is using LibreOffice in the backend. So again, open source, obviously. So it comes with really good document compatibility because it is using LibreOffice in the back. But this is, of course, the online version that you can access on the browser, and you could do collaborative editing. You can different people with different cursors working the same document. It works very, very nicely. Then, of course, we also have to do, because this is what people expect, do some AI features. So we have a Nextcloud Assistant that is very similar to Copilot or Google Gemini. It helps you like answering your emails, sorting them automatically, summarizing chat conversations, summarizing email conversations, make it possible to research your local data you have in your Nextcloud, and all cool new convenient features. And again, 100% open source and 100% locally running. So you can use all these features, but you don't need to send all your confidential data to ChatGPT or other services. Everything, again, local and open source. And then the last component I want to mention is Nextcloud Flow. This is a workflow component which can be used to automate different processes in Nextcloud. For if you get a certain mail, it's automatically get a notification, it's turned into a PDF, there's an, I don't know, database entry created, all kinds of automation that are quite cool. So Nextcloud is a full collaboration suite, very similar to Microsoft and Google, and I think we have similar functionalities as them. So this is the end of the advertising block, by the way, finally. So the topic of this call here, of this presentation is, of course, the cloud people want. Right? I mean, I showed you all these features so far that we can do, but what is it that people actually want? So what is the difference? Is Nextcloud just another company that might become huge in the future and then turns into the next big tech company. It just turns into the next Microsoft. Sometimes people say, well, Nextcloud is so successful, you only want to become big and you want to become like the next Microsoft, right? Well, there are some fundamental things differently. And this is what I want to talk about here for the rest of the presentation. There are some things where Nextcloud is just fundamentally different and I think better and really gives the people what they want, in my opinion. Just fundamental differences. And this is why we cannot and will not turn into the next Microsoft or Google. So let's go into the details. Why is Nextcloud different? Why is Nextcloud better? So first, I already mentioned that is the whole hosting, the whole operations of Nextcloud is decentralized. As I said, we at Nextcloud, we don't have any servers, we don't have any data, we don't have any logins, we don't have any passwords, we have nothing, we don't even have metadata, we don't even know who is using Nextcloud because you run it yourself. That's a fundamental difference to all these other big tech companies who are all about software as a service and vendor login and so on. We as Nextcloud only do the software, you run it. We have no information what you do with it. You have no information who's using it. You have no information what is in it. So this is the first fundamental difference why Nextcloud is better. Second thing, the Cloud Act doesn't apply. I already mentioned it a little bit earlier. The Cloud Act is a US law which says that every US company needs to give full access to the US government, to all the data they have access to on request. So whenever your data is managed by a US company, then basically the government can at any time say, okay, I'm really interested in what these people are doing, just give me all the data. So this does not apply to us in two ways. First of all, we are not a US company, so we don't need to follow US. Oh, by the way, this US Cloud Act also applies to situations where this data is stored outside the US. This is something that is often in evil marketing from big tech companies is really explained in a bad way, in a wrong way. So for example, if you go to AWS or to Microsoft or Google, you can say, yeah, I want to become a customer of you, but please store your data in a European hosting center. And then people think that they're safe, but they're not. As long as it is a US company, they need to give away access to the data, even if the data is outside the US. That's explicitly mentioned in the law. So again, we are not affected by that in two ways. First, we are not a US company, so US laws don't apply to us. But second, even if it would, we don't have the data in the first place, as I said in point number one, right? We cannot give away any data because we don't have it. You as users, you have it yourself. So basically, this is why Nextcloud is fundamentally better, because the Cloud Act doesn't apply to us. Third point is, it is open source. And I think in this group, I don't need to describe the benefits of open source. But the important thing is that the ownership of the source code of Nextcloud is distributed between everybody who contributed. So in the core itself, we have over 2,000 volunteers who contribute code to Nextcloud. And these 2,000 people have the copyright of their individual contributions. This means that the license can never be changed. We saw this in the open source world a few times lately, where some companies decided, okay, now we switch to open core, we switch to business source licenses, we make it not open source anymore because they want to optimize their revenue. Even if we as Nextcloud, or even if I would become evil tomorrow, I don't have the right to change the license. You would need to have the permissions from everybody who contributed to Nextcloud in the last 15 years, which is of course not possible. So it is open source, and it will always stay open source. So this cannot be changed by anyone. So very important point. So next point is code audits, right? So the Nextcloud source code can be audited and checked by independent people to see if what we are saying in our marketing is actually true. You can actually check that there are no backdoors. You can see it yourself, there are no backdoors, and that everything works as advertised, right? And of course, some people then come to us and say, yeah, I don't have the resources. I don't have the people to read like million lines of source codes. Who can do that? Well, you don't have to, because other people already did it for you. So lots and lots of individuals and other organizations actually audited the source code already and confirmed that it works correctly. So you can be sure. With proprietary software companies, you cannot trust anyone, right? If you don't know what Microsoft is doing, you don't know what Google is doing, there's no way to check because you don't have access to the source code. Fifth point is maybe a bit of a special one, but maybe I think in this group here, it's basically, I think it's you can understand what it means. So we as the Nextcloud company, I see ourselves as stewards of the Nextcloud project. So we employ a lot of the core developers. We make the decisions, what we develop, should we go in this direction, should we do in that direction, should we include this feature or not, and so on. And I think we are trying really, really hard to do this in a way that, well, that is the cloud that people want, that we do it in a way that our users like it. But if we at the Nextcloud side are doing wrong decisions in the future, if we're doing mistakes, if we are acting against your interest, if we turning Nextcloud into something that people don't want, right? If Nextcloud is not the cloud that people want, but because we turn it into, I don't know, we're building whatever, blockchain mining into it, I don't know, something really stupid, and it is no longer what you want, then you or anyone else can fork it and then turn it into a better direction, right? If we are moving this into a direction that is not good for you, you and others can fix that. You're not depending on us. You can take the code and you just fork it and you make better decisions. You don't really need to trust us. And this is something, again, that is fundamentally different and fundamentally not possible with big tech companies. Then, of course, we are following open standards. This is very, very important. So this is also important for vendor login. So, for example, internally, we work a lot with Markdown files, with the OTF files from the Document Foundation, all kinds of other open standards. Also the APIs, we use WebDAV, CalDAV, CarDAV, we use the ActivityPub standard and so on. So we really use open standards and open file formats for everything, which makes integration with other systems and also importing and exporting a lot easier. Other big tech products, they really want to lock the people in by making it not possible to export data and use proprietary formats that you cannot access. But we are committed to open standards and open formats, very important. Then we don't have advertising in the product at all. Maybe sounds obvious for most of you, but there are plenty of products who have advertising built in, very similar to tracking. We don't have any tracking in there. We don't track what users are doing there. And again, because you can audit the code, you can actually see that it's true. There's no tracking in there. Other people do a lot of tracking. With Microsoft, you wouldn't believe. You can really check who is writing the most emails, who is clicking the fastest, who is like responding the earliest, who is working the most hours in the day, who is like looking at the camera, who is playing games in parallel. I don't know. There's tons of tracking in Microsoft and Google products. And Nextcloud, there's absolutely no tracking. And then last but not least, it's we are also care about sustainability and energy consumption. So I'm really happy that we are actually the first and only cloud software in the world who has this Blauer Engel certification. That's a German certification, which is measures and certifies energy consumption. So this is typically used for kitchen appliances, like for toasters and fridges and washing machines. But this is now expanded into cloud software. And we are the first and only one who have the certification that we are really taking care to reduce energy consumption and really have sustainable software. Now I want to talk about some very special aspects of it. The first is, I already mentioned it a little bit, our ecosystem. So this is the core of Nextcloud. Again, Nextcloud Files, Nextcloud Talk, Groupware, Office, Assistant, Flow, and so on. And some people think that this is very monolithic, that we do everything, but that's not true. First of all these components are optional. You can switch them on and off as you want. And most important, we are working with lots and other projects out there. So we actually have integrations with lots of other tools, mostly open source. I mean, open source software is our friend, but we also work with proprietary. So if you, in your organization, you have some proprietary tool, you really need to have WebEx or really want to have Notion because of whatever reason, we recommend to use open source alternatives, but if you have to, we most likely have integrations. So we can work with everybody. And that's a very, very important thing. And then the next concept I want to talk about, which is, because it's very, very important for us, is federation. So federation is the following concept. This is, of course, how proprietary centralized clouds work, right? You have like one software as a service, centralized service server. So you have the infrastructure hosting center owned by these big tech companies. And then you have all the users that are connecting to the central instance, right? We talked about it. That's obviously bad. Nextcloud is already a little bit better because it is decentralized. So as I already mentioned, you can just take the software, you can run it wherever you want on a Raspberry Pi, on some Linux server, on whatever infrastructure you have. And then you have lots and lots of Nextclouds, and you can have your local users and they can all talk to your instance. So there's no centralized place. There is no main Nextcloud server. It's really distributed. Very nice. But you can already see the problem. There are lots and lots of islands here, right? If like all these Nextcloud users are on different servers, they're also isolated from each other. And this is, of course, not good. And this is what the concept of federation solves. Because federation makes it possible that these different Nextcloud servers can actually talk to each other. So it is possible that maybe I running my Nextcloud on my Raspberry Pi at home, and someone else is using Nextcloud at a university or a school, and someone else is using Nextcloud at a big service provider, and someone else uses Nextcloud at their company, I don't know. But we can still communicate and collaborate together. We can all show it to you in a second. We can share files, we can chat, we can video calls without the central instance. There is no central instance here. Then you might think that, oh, this sounds really, really complicated from a technical point of view. Like, who would design such a system? How can this even work? This is really complicated. Well, it is actually not, because this is, for example, exactly like email works, right? As you know, maybe I'm running my own mail server. Maybe some of you have mails from your university or your company. Maybe one of you is using like Gmail or Hotmail or whatever. And you have different mail servers, but we can still send each other emails, right? We can all send each other emails. Doesn't matter where your mail server is and what your mail server is, right? And there is no central mail server in the world, and that's not needed. And email is also not owned by a company. It is just a standard. Because it's an open standard, we can all send each other emails without the need to have a central thing in the middle. And this is exactly how we did it with Nextcloud. So go into details. This is, again, a screenshot of Nextcloud files. This is where you can upload, download all your files, your photos, your documents, whatever you want. And on the right side, you have the sidebar where you can share your documents with other people. You can share it with people on the same server, but you can also create links and send these links to access the data to other people. But you can also do something cool, and you can use the federated cloud ID of people on other servers. So this is usually like name at server address, right? Like Frank at Nextcloud server.com, whatever. right? And if I do that, then one server sends a request to the other server and says, hey, there is this person here who really wants to share these files with this person on your server. Do you want to accept this or not? And the person gets a notification, hey, there's an incoming share request. And you can say, yeah, I accept it. And then you have communication between the two servers. You have like one folder on my side, and you can drop in all my vacation photos there, and all show up on the folder of this other person on this other instance, as if they would be on the same machine, but they're not. It behaves as one machine, but they're not. And this all goes peer-to-peer without a central instance. And this is something we developed a long time ago already. We even made this an official standard. It's called Open Cloud Mesh. And that's also implemented by some other organizations. So this is an open standard that also works between different cloud solutions. And then lately we expanded this into other areas. For example, Nextcloud Talk, we made it possible that you can chat with people on other servers. So you can pull in people from other servers into your group conversation or your one-on-one conversation. And again, same logic. You can say, hey, I want to invite this person, username at other server. And then this other person gets an invitation like, hey, someone, you want to join this conversation here? Do you want to accept or not? And if you accept, then you're just in this group chat as if you would be on the same server, but you're not. And we expanded this now also lately to video calls. So you can now call people federatedly on other machines. It can be in group calls, or you can just have one-on-one calls with people on different servers and different Nextcloud instances. And again, without a central instance. And spoiler alert, we are expanding this to other services. So in the next release, that's not public information yet, but we're working on that. For the next release, we're expanding this to calendar sharing. So you can then also have a shared calendar between people that are on different Nextcloud servers. So maybe you have your, I don't know, some friends are using Nextcloud at the school, university, someone else is using Nextcloud as a service provider, maybe yourself have your self-hosted Nextcloud, and you can all share your, I don't know, soccer club calendar with everybody that don't need to be on the same server. So this is really, really powerful. So yeah, to summarize, I'm at the end of my presentation now. To summarize, I think you can have very powerful, great software, but you can do things differently. We are Nextcloud trying to do things differently. We're trying to give all the users the control. We as company don't have any control. We just build the software. And I think you can be fairer towards the people, the users, citizens, free society, and yeah, to do full circle. And I think this is why Nextcloud is probably a little bit more the cloud that people want compared to these big tech companies. And now I'm at the end of my presentation, so I used a lot of time.
Yeah.
Sorry for that. I hope there's still time for a discussion. Yeah.
Oh, it will definitely be. Thank you, Frank. And I think that it's a lot to learn. And then I don't mind that you went too deep into the details, because we have been like all the day, like, building utopia, trying to serve people. And one of the difficulties, of course, that many times we have is that we have these small niche projects not really scaling. So one of the things that I'm curious about is when it really started to take off. What was the adoption at scale that changed the landscape for you, like in your experience? And if you can share a little bit of the secret sauce that led to that.
I don't know.
When wow, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I have the perfect answer. So, first of all, it takes time, right? When I started this, and this was still at the own cloud times, the first few months, it was like some people looked into it, some people like used it, but it was very, very small. And then like the press started to write about it, more people got interested, and then it was growing. But the first like real big user, and also the first customer basically who gave money, was like at, I don't know, 2 or 3 years later. So it really took a lot of time. But maybe a tip is is what helps Nextcloud a lot is that it is a product that is useful for home users, but also for big organizations. I think this is an important component because you need to have the home users because they're your fans, they're your ambassadors, and they're also your open source contributors who help to make the product better. But they're not really paying for the software, right? To get paid, you need to have a product that works for big companies and big governments. So it's good or necessary to have a product that works for home users, 2 people on a Raspberry Pi, but also 100,000 people in a government. So that's important.
I personally use a fork of Nextcloud for personal entertainment. And it's not because it was my choice. It was a choice of a friend who's a collector of films and music and so on, to share the curated catalogs with friends and family. But one of the things that is interesting to me is like, why am I not doing it with, like, for example, my family pictures and very valuable things for me, even if I'm I'm an activist fighting for all of this, is sometimes the previous work is not plug and play. So part of the previous work that you have to have your own cloud, your Nextcloud running, it can be intimidating for some. How have you navigated this starting complexity? And which were the steps from very technically savvy early adopters to what you have now that is very close to people?
Yeah, very good question. So as you said, we have a lot of features and sometimes very powerful and complicated features. And we also have a very active community who is adding more and more features all the time. And this could lead to a product that is just overloaded and super complicated to use and would not be compatible with your family and my family, and we want to have something simple. So this is why I'm a big fan of our plugin system. We have this app system, we have this plugin system, and a lot of things can be switched on and off at Nextcloud. So you can make it like super simple, but you can also make it very powerful and everything in between. So I think this flexibility with plugins are a really good thing.
There's a very good question in the chat from Diego. He's asking if you have been ever offered a load of money to acquire these from the bad guys. Do you have any story like that?
No.
Have you seen offers from big tech companies?
We never got any offer from the big tech companies. Sometimes you get requests from investors who want to invest in it, but we're always saying no. The reason is you cannot really buy Nextcloud. You could buy our company, but as I said earlier, the source code is open source and will always be open. So I don't know if someone would buy the Nextcloud company, and someone else will pick up the code and push it forward. So you cannot really. It's shared ownership of the whole community, and you cannot really buy the software. You could buy the employees and the name, but the idea and the software, the source code and everything is will stay. So because of that, it's actually we are not so valuable because we are just the developers of it. So we don't really get these big offers.
What I'm also curious is you have from a long time ago a blueprint of sustainable business that is serving people, that is not eating data, that is respecting privacy and sovereignty of people, and to do what they need to do with technology. Why is Europe and many other countries, if this technology is available, why is the other model the one that is prevailing? What would you if you had a wish? What would you fix so to shift the situation to alternatives like this one?
I would love to know the answer myself for that. I don't know. So it is definitely not the technology. So the technology is there. There's Nextcloud. There are also lots of other open source projects. I mean, we're using Big Blue Button here for this call. The technology is available. So this is not the problem. it is somehow, I don't know, people feel safe to keep on using what they're always using. People are afraid of change. They're afraid of going with the non-mainstream solution. So I think a lot of organizations, they're just like Microsoft and Google because everybody's using Microsoft and Google, so it must be good. It is really sticking to, I don't know, the well-known solution. And this is something that needs to be overcome. And the technology is there, but breaking the habits, I think this is the main thing.
One of the interesting things that you were sharing and highlighting was this ability to federate and interoperability. I come from Latin America, and many in our audience today are from Africa. And, constantly, yet every other year, there's yet another project of digitization, digital transformation, modernization of the state and all of that. And something that is interesting is, of course, you are very broadly adopted in Europe, but have this vision, and have you had clients or partners outside Europe? And has there been any barriers of adoption that you didn't foresee working in a very privileged, let's say, and resourceful environment while planning and localizing?
Yeah, this is also, that's a very good question. So, of course, we at Europe, I'm from Europe, we have to, as you said correctly, we have to realize that we are in a very privileged position. So we have access to lots and lots of different services. Most of us can afford to pay a few euros for services, and we can just pick and choose. And so we are in the privileged position that we can look for ethical solutions, like privacy aware and ethical open source solutions, because we have our standards and our values, and we have the resources to protect it. But if you're from like the global south, for example, you don't have the luxury to I don't know, pay for services and pick and choose what you have to choose what you can afford and what's available, right? And if there is I don't know, Google gives you Google Drive a few gigabytes for free, that's very attractive. If you want to use Nextcloud, the software is of course also free, but you need to have a server to put it on. And if you tell people, oh, first get the server and install Nextcloud, and then okay, a server, who can afford a server, right? Like Google Drive is for free. It includes the server actually. So sometimes if you're in the global south, then you don't have the luxury that you can choose ethical solutions. You need to choose what you can get. And that's sometimes a challenge that people in Europe forget.
Well, we want to reframe that conversation of getting what you can get just because that's what you get for free and you can afford. Because something that I want to highlight here, of course, we get the freebies in many, very resource constrained situations, but we pay with data. And we pay with being predictable and being vulnerable in ways that then we have to pay the bill twice and sometimes three times. And so I starting to grow up this conversation. The idea is something that I envision is that something like Nextcloud can be tweaked and adapt to lower costs at the server level, to localize the versions of the kind of technology that we want to see in the world. And it's something that my colleague here, Patricia De Boca, insists, sometimes we don't need all the features, we need to be able to get on with our work and in tools that we can trust. Something that is very hidden is all the costs that governments, my dear mentor Dorothy Gordon is sharing here, is that so much money goes on licenses to big tech via agreements, all the data that we share and so on. So I would like to frame in this as we are closing this the Tech People Want online summit, reframe it in that way. I am very grateful that you shared this blueprint because it's we close today with hard evidence that ethical principle, rights preserving technology can be built and can scale and can be good for and can be configured different with different architecture and can serve us to navigate our personal professional lives. And so I think that is possible. I think that another cloud is possible. And maybe it needs to be we need more volunteers from different jurisdictions in the project. Maybe we need different projects like similar to Nextcloud, but shaped with different with the constraints of other contexts. But the reality is that today we have tech that works and serves people without abusing rights and without concentrating power or money in ways that are harmful. And even now with this addition that you mentioned of respectful of planetary boundaries as well. Before we close, I want just to open quickly for 2-3 questions, and then we can wrap up. Richard, do you want to ask the question loud?
I can answer some of the questions in the chat if you want.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah, so there is a question about the end-to-end encryption. Yeah, this is something we are working on making better and better. Actually, we have it introduced sharing already that can have shared resources end-to-end encrypted. Then there is the wish to have end-to-end encrypted web interface, which is, according to our security people, a bit of a critical thing, that it can leak data, but we made this now possible. The latest release optionally, so we can have a read-only web interface for end-to-end encrypted data. And the next release will also do read-write, so can also edit data end-to-end encrypted in the web interface. So we're making this better like every time. I hope this answers the question. Yeah, then there's a question about the Google Play Store. I think this was summarized by our blog post. So Google really took away the permission for Nextcloud to access the files on the local phone, which is of course stupid because we want to sync the files. That's the purpose of Nextcloud, but you can't access the files, then it doesn't work anymore. And yeah, they ignored our complaints, and then we had to talk with the press, and there was a bit of a story, and then Google came back and gave us the permission back. So we can now sync files again on Android devices. So that's good. What other questions? There's a question if you get support from the EU for this open source project. No, we don't get support from the EU from anyone else. We actually get no support at all. But this is actually fine with me, because I think for a sustainable organization, you want to have you want to get the money from your customers, from your users. You don't want to get the money from the government. That's not sustainable. And so we don't get any public money, but it's fine because we have happy customers and they give us the money. That's the best thing. And there was a question about who is using Nextcloud. So lots of European governments using Nextcloud: French government, Italian, Spanish, German, Netherlands, Swedish. So we have lots and lots of happy government customers who want to protect their data locally. And yeah, this is also where we got most of our funding from, like happy customers, basically. I don't see any more questions.
Well, I think that is a good moment to wrap up and being, respectful of everyone's time. I'm very grateful, Frank. I think that I'm very excited. I know that it looked like a little bit like demo, the talk, but you highlighted very important aspects of the tech people want. People want reliable technology that respects data, that they can control, and that they do not have to worry about the invisible hand on the other end grabbing all the data of the most private conversations, most sensitive information. So I also want to thank all the speakers, all the participants, and remind you that this will be recorded and this will be summarized so the conversation can be accessible to others. We will try to curate all the links that you shared in the notes of the event, each of the talks, and we are continuing tomorrow. I will pass the mic to Lucas, who will tell us a little bit more what's going to be like tomorrow, and just thank everyone for the attention and the respectful conversation. And hopefully we will move to have all our own clouds, sovereign clouds, next year when we meet again. Over to you, Lucas.